All right, let's dive into a topic that, you might not think is super fascinating at first glance.
Oh,
Notebooks.
oh yeah.
I know what you're thinking. Notebooks. Really?
Right.
But stick with me here because there's actually a really fascinating story unfolding, and it's way more than just, like jotting down to-do lists.
Yeah, it really is. It's pretty fascinating to see how something, that seems so simple
Yeah.
can actually reflect some really big changes that are happening in the world right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've got some really interesting insights from Lion Paper Products and their CEO, Leo Shia.
Okay.
And they're kind of giving us a peek behind the curtain of this whole, like, stylish and sustainable notebook movement.
So are you telling me that, like, there's more to these notebooks than meets the eye?
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the big things that Lion Paper talks about is this, like, tension that retailers are facing,
Okay.
where, consumers want notebooks that are beautiful and unique, but they also want them to be eco-friendly. And, finding that balance isn't always easy.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like wanting to have your cake and eat it, too.
Right.
You want something that looks good, but you also want to, feel good about where it came from.
Exactly. And, this isn't just happening with notebooks.
Right.
Like, this whole idea of conscious consumerism
Yeah.
is becoming huge across all sorts of industries.
So it's like not just a fad, it's actually like a real
Yeah.
shift in like how people are thinking about shopping and what they buy.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
Lion Paper cites this study that found that, like, a whopping 85% of consumers
Wow.
actually prefer brands that are committed to the environment.
Mm.
And get this, 73% are even willing to pay more for sustainable products.
Wow. So it's not just a niche market anymore. It's actually like
Yeah, it's totally mainstream.
mainstream. It's huge.
Yeah, those are some big numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, so how are these companies actually, like, making notebooks both stylish and sustainable? Like, what's the
Yeah.
magic formula? Well, Lion Paper, they break down a few key solutions that they're using.
Okay.
First off, it's all about the materials.
Okay.
So they're using things like recycled paper,
Mm-hmm.
wood pulp that's certified by the Forest Stewardship Council,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that the trees are harvested responsibly.
Right.
And even, like, some cool alternative fibers like bamboo or sugarcane.
Oh, sugarcane paper. That's pretty wild. So
Yeah.
it's like not just about using less paper, it's about actually sourcing it in a way
Yes.
that's like less harmful to the planet, right?
Exactly. And there's this really neat example that Lion Paper gives.
Okay.
They're creating, like, a line of notebooks that's made from repurposed agricultural waste.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah. So it's like things that would normally just be thrown away
Oh, wow.
are now being turned into, beautiful and useful products.
That's amazing. It's like turning trash into treasure.
Totally.
I bet that makes a big difference.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it just shows how companies are getting really creative
Yeah.
to find more sustainable solutions.
Right.
But, it's not just about the materials themselves.
Yeah.
It's also about how they're used.
Okay.
So Lion Paper talks about things like embossing, metallic finishes, vibrant soy-based inks,
Oh, cool.
all designed to, add a touch of style without compromising sustainability.
So it's like proving that eco-friendly doesn't have to mean like boring,
All right.
You can still have a notebook that looks and feels luxurious.
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of what's driving this whole trend.
Yeah.
People want to be able to express their values through their purchases.
Yeah.
And a stylish, sustainable product lets them do that.
Yeah.
It's like a way of saying, hey, I care about the planet, and
Yeah.
I've got good taste too.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's like these notebooks are becoming a way for people to actually like show off their commitment to sustainability,
Totally.
but in a way that's still stylish.
Yeah, for sure.
But how can consumers be sure that these companies are really walking the walk, so to speak? How do we know they're not just greenwashing?
That's a great question. That's where things like certifications come in. Lion Paper mentions working with manufacturers who have certifications like ISO 9001 and Disney Fama.
Okay.
So you can be sure that these notebooks are meeting, like, really high standards
Right.
for both quality and ethical production.
So those certifications are like a stamp of approval, letting customers know that these companies are legit.
Exactly.
That makes sense. What else is Lion Paper doing to really make sure they're on the right track with sustainability?
Well, they're really big on this idea of lean manufacturing.
Okay.
It might sound kind of technical,
Yeah.
but basically it's all about reducing waste and streamlining the whole production process.
So it's not just about the materials. It's also about like
Yeah.
being efficient with every step of making the notebook.
Yes,
Tell
exactly.
me a little bit more about that. What does that actually look like in practice?
So Lion Paper actually provides this really cool comparison table that shows how their practices stack up against, like, industry standards.
Okay.
For example, they use 80% recycled materials,
Wow.
which is way higher than the industry average.
Yeah.
They've also managed to cut down their lead times.
Okay.
Basically the time it takes to get the notebooks from the factory to your hands,
Right.
and all while keeping their prices competitive.
Wow. So they're actually making it work?
They are. Yeah.
It's like they're proving that sustainability doesn't have to mean sacrificing efficiency or affordability.
Exactly. And that's a really important message, I think, for businesses to hear.
Right.
Because for too long, there's been this idea that, going green means spending a fortune.
Yeah.
And Lion Paper showing that it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. That's really encouraging. It makes me wonder if they can do it with notebooks.
Yeah.
What other industries could benefit from this kind of approach?
That is a great question.
Right.
And I think it's something that we'll definitely be exploring more as we continue our deep dive.
All right. I'm hooked.
Awesome.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, there's one more thing that Lion Paper mentions that I want to touch on.
Good.
And that's transparency.
Right.
They seem really committed to being open about their entire process.
Transparency is huge.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age where consumers are, more informed and demanding than ever before.
Totally.
And Lion Paper really emphasizes this, talking about how they're upfront about everything, from sourcing materials to shipping the final product.
So it's like they're inviting customers to look behind the curtain and see exactly what's going on.
Totally.
I bet that builds a lot of trust.
Absolutely. And it's something that consumers are increasingly looking for. They want to know the story behind the products they buy.
Yeah.
Where they came from, how they were made.
It's like that saying, people don't buy what you do.
Yes.
They buy why you do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when companies are transparent about their values and their practices, it just creates a much deeper connection with their customers.
Right.
Okay,
so we've got sustainable materials, efficient manufacturing, and radical transparency. It sounds like Lion Paper's really trying to change the game here.
They are, yeah.
But what does this all actually mean for the average person?
Right.
Why should we care about all this?
Yeah.
Besides, maybe getting a cool new notebook.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is that this is about much more than just notebooks.
Okay.
This is about a shift in consciousness. Like a recognition that our choices have a real impact on the world around us.
So it's like every time we buy a sustainably made notebook, we're kind of like casting a vote for a more ethical and eco-conscious future.
Exactly. And those votes add up.
Yeah.
When enough people start demanding better,
Yeah.
businesses have no choice but to listen.
I love that. It makes me feel like we actually have some power
We do.
to make a difference through our everyday choices.
Yeah. We absolutely do. And that's what's so exciting about this whole movement,
Yeah.
It's about reclaiming our power as consumers
Right.
and using it to create a world that we're proud to be a part of.
Okay. We've covered a lot of ground here,
Yeah, we have.
but I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Totally.
There's so much more to unpack here.
For sure.
Let's take a quick break and come back to explore what all of this means
Okay.
for businesses and for all of us as consumers.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're back and, ready to dig a little deeper into this whole world of stylish and sustainable notebooks.
All right.
I'm starting to see how something that seemed so, I don't know, ordinary at first can actually be like this window into some really big changes that are happening in our world.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
These notebooks are kind of like a symbol, I think, of how consumers are becoming so much more, aware and demanding, and businesses are really having to adapt and evolve.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time to be watching all of this unfold.
It is, yeah.
So we've talked a lot about what Lion Paper is doing, but I want to zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
What about other businesses?
Yeah.
If a company wants to kind of jump on this bandwagon, where do they even begin?
Well, I think the first step is to kind of take a good hard look in the mirror.
Okay.
So to speak.
All right.
Lion Paper talks about the importance of really assessing your current practices. Where are the biggest areas of waste? Are you sourcing materials responsibly?
Right.
What are your customers actually asking for?
So it's like doing a sustainability audit of your whole operation.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be this like massive, overwhelming project.
Okay.
You can start small.
Right.
Maybe focus on one area at a time.
Okay.
Could you switch to recycled packaging? Is there a supplier out there who uses renewable energy?
Right.
Like little changes can really add up to a big impact.
Okay, so start small, but think big.
Exactly.
What else? What other advice would you give to a company that's trying to make their products more sustainable?
You know, one thing that Line Paper really stresses is the power of communication.
Okay.
Don't just make changes behind the scenes, like shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah, I love that.
Let your customers know what you're doing and why it matters.
Instead of just selling a product, you're selling a whole philosophy.
Yes.
It's like, hey, we're not just offering you a notebook.
Right.
We're offering you a way to, like, live your values.
Exactly. And consumers are hungry for that kind of authenticity.
Yeah.
They want to support businesses that are, walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Okay, so you need to walk the walk and talk the talk.
You got it.
Got it. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room money.
Yay.
Because I know a lot of business owners might be listening to this and thinking, this all sounds great, but can we actually afford it?
Yeah, that's a really valid concern. And it's something that Line Paper addresses directly.
Okay.
They actually argue that sustainability isn't necessarily about spending more money. It's about spending it smarter.
Interesting. How so?
Well, remember that lean manufacturing idea we were talking about?
Yeah.
Well, part of that is all about cutting out waste.
Right.
And when you're wasting less, you're often saving money.
Yeah.
So in many cases, sustainability and profitability can actually go hand in hand.
So it's like a win-win situation.
Exactly.
You're doing good for the planet, A&D, good for your bottom line.
Totally.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
So that's good news.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, the good news is that there are actually tons of resources out there
Okay.
to help businesses get started.
Oh, that's good.
There are certifications, consulting firms, online communities, you name it.
Wow.
There's this whole ecosystem of support out there
That's awesome.
for companies that want to, make this shift towards sustainability.
That's really good to know because you might feel overwhelmed at first, but it sounds like you're not alone.
You're not, no.
There are people and organizations that can help you
Yeah,
guide you through this whole process.
exactly. Yeah. And it's important to remember that, this isn't just about following a set of rules or checking boxes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room for creativity and innovation in this space.
Oh, totally. We were just talking earlier about how Lion Paper is using things like sugarcane and agricultural waste to make paper. It seems like there's a lot of potential out there for new discoveries and cool new ideas when it comes to sustainable materials.
Absolutely. We're seeing incredible innovations in materials, manufacturing processes, even like product design.
That's awesome.
And, this isn't just limited to notebooks.
Right.
Think about all the possibilities in fashion, food, technology. The list goes on and on.
It's like this whole wave of sustainable innovation is washing over every industry.
It is, yeah. And I think that's what makes this so exciting. You know? It's not just about being less bad for the environment.
Right.
It's about finding completely new ways to do things.
Totally.
Ways that are better for, both people and the planet.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about mitigating harm.
Right.
It's about actively creating a better future.
Exactly.
But all this talk about businesses and innovation, it's easy to get caught up in the big picture.
Yeah.
But what about us regular folks?
Right.
How can we as consumers play a role in this whole sustainability movement?
I think the most important thing is to be informed.
Okay.
Do your research, read labels, ask questions. Don't just take things at face value.
So it's about becoming more conscious consumers.
Yes.
Really understanding the impact of our choices.
Exactly. And then, of course, vote with your wallet.
Yes.
Support the businesses that are doing things the right way.
Right.
Choose products that are made responsibly, even if it means spending a little bit more.
Yeah, it's like putting our money where our mouth is.
Totally.
Right, supporting the kind of world we want to live in.
Yes.
Through the choices that we're making every day.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to, speak up.
Yeah.
Tell your friends and family about the companies that you love, the products you're excited about.
Yeah.
Demand more from the businesses that you patronize.
So it's about using our voices and our choices to create like a ripple effect,
Totally.
Spreading this message of sustainability far and wide.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about notebooks or any one specific product.
Yeah.
It's about creating a world where business and sustainability go hand in hand. A world where doing good and doing well are no longer seen as, mutually exclusive.
That's a beautiful vision.
Yeah.
And it seems like we're actually moving in the right direction.
We are.
With all this innovation, all this awareness, it's really inspiring.
I agree. Yeah, there's still a long way to go.
Right.
But I'm really optimistic about the future.
Yeah.
I think we're at a tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
And the choices that we make today are going to determine what that future looks like.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so we've talked about businesses.
Yes.
We've talked about consumers.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the power of our choices.
Yes.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle that I want to touch on before we wrap things up.
Right.
And that's the role of partnerships.
Right.
Lion Paper mentions this briefly.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth exploring a little bit further.
Totally. Partnerships are absolutely essential because, no business can achieve sustainability in isolation.
Right.
It takes collaboration.
Yeah.
And cooperation across the entire supply chain.
So it's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And we need to work together to create real change.
Exactly. And that's something that Lion Paper really understands.
Okay.
They've built really strong relationships with their suppliers, their manufacturers, and even their customers.
Wow.
To create a more sustainable ecosystem.
So it's like creating a shared vision and working together to achieve it.
Yes.
Rather than just focusing on your own little corner of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing that everyone has a role to play in driving sustainability.
Uh-huh.
From the farmers who grow the raw materials,
right,
to the designers who create the products, to the consumers who ultimately choose what to buy.
Yeah.
We're all part of this interconnected web.
Wow, I'd never thought about it that way before.
Yeah.
It really puts things in perspective.
It does.
But how do you actually go about building those kinds of partnerships? What does that look like in practice?
Well, Lion Paper talks about starting by carefully selecting partners.
Okay.
Who share their commitment to sustainability.
Right.
So they're not just looking for, the cheapest or the fastest option.
Right.
They're looking for partners who are aligned with their values.
So it's about finding people who are on the same page as you, who are just as passionate about sustainability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's about investing the time and the resources to build strong relationships with those partners.
Okay.
It's not just about, signing a contract and moving on.
Right.
It's about creating a true partnership.
Yeah.
Where everyone is working together towards a common goal.
Like a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
Where everyone brings their own unique skills and perspectives to the table.
Right. And when you have that kind of synergy, that's when the magic really happens. That's when you can create something, truly innovative and sustainable.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yes.
From the nitty-gritty details of sustainable materials to the big picture ideas of conscious consumerism and collaborative partnerships.
Yeah.
I'm feeling inspired, but I have to admit it's a lot to take in.
It is. It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
And there are no easy answers.
Right.
But I think what's important is that we're having this conversation.
Right.
That we're starting to, ask the tough questions and explore the possibilities.
Totally. So as we head into the final stretch of our deep dive, I'm curious, what's one key takeaway that you hope our listeners will walk away with today?
That's a tough one.
What's the one thing you want them to remember?
I think the most important message is this.
Okay.
Don't underestimate the power of your choices. Every purchase you make, every product you use, sends a message to the marketplace.
So it's about being mindful consumers and using our purchasing power to shape the world that we want to live in.
Absolutely. And it's about remembering that sustainability is not a destination.
Right.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's about constantly striving to do better, to be more responsible, and to create a more, equitable and sustainable future for all.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up part 2 of our deep dive. Okay. We'll be back in a moment for our final thoughts on this fascinating topic. Okay, we're back for the last part of our deep dive into stylish and sustainable notebooks.
Yeah.
Who knew there was so much to say about notebooks?
It's been a journey, hasn't it?
It has.
We've gone from talking about recycled paper to like the future of conscious consumerism.
Yeah, it really shows how even the smallest objects, like a simple notebook, can connect to these much larger trends and ideas.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
Totally. It's like these notebooks became this unexpected springboard for this whole conversation about sustainability, innovation, and, the power of our choices.
Yeah. And speaking of the power of choices, I think that's, one of the biggest takeaways from our deep dive.
Yeah.
So far, we've seen how consumers are demanding more from the companies that they support.
Yeah.
More transparency, more ethical practices, more sustainable products.
Yeah, it's like people are starting to realize that their dollars are actually like votes.
Totally.
And they can use those votes to support the kind of world that they want to see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And businesses are starting to get the message, too.
Yeah.
They're realizing that sustainability is no longer just a nice to have.
Right.
It's a must-have if they want to stay relevant and competitive,
right,
in today's market.
It's like the whole marketplace is undergoing this massive shift,
Right.
towards a more values-driven model.
Yeah, and that's where things get really exciting.
Okay.
Because it opens up so many possibilities for, like, innovation and positive change.
I'm intrigued. Paint me a picture of what this future could look like.
Okay.
What possibilities are we talking about?
Well, imagine a world where every product tells a story.
Okay.
A story about where it came from, how it was made, and what kind of impact it had on the planet.
So each product is like a little ambassador for sustainability.
Exactly. And consumers become like active participants in that story by
Yeah.
choosing products that, align with their values.
I love that. It's like we're moving away from this culture of just like mindless consumption
Yeah.
to a culture of conscious consumerism.
Yes. And that shift has the potential to transform not just individual businesses, but like entire industries.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a powerful thought. So it's not just about buying a better notebook. It's about contributing to this larger movement
Right.
that's reshaping how we think about business and our relationship with the planet.
Exactly. And it all starts with awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Once we understand the impact of our choices, we can start making more informed decisions
Yeah.
about what we buy and how we live.
You know what I think is one of the most valuable things about this deep dive?
Yeah.
Is that it's helped me connect the dots between something as simple as a notebook
Right.
to these much larger issues of sustainability and ethical consumption.
Totally. Yeah.
It's given me a whole new perspective.
And that's exactly what we were hoping for. Because,
Yeah.
knowledge is power. And the more informed we are, the more empowered we are to actually make a difference.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this conversation? What's the message that you want to leave them with?
I would say don't underestimate the power of your choices. Every purchase you make, every product you use sends a signal to the marketplace.
Right.
You have the power to support the companies that are doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And you have the power to demand better from those that aren't.
So it's about taking responsibility for our impact.
Yeah.
And using our consumer power
Yeah.
to shape the world that we want to live in.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that sustainability is not a destination, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's about constantly learning, evolving, and striving to do better.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to bring our deep dive to a close.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the surprisingly fascinating world of stylish and sustainable notebooks. We hope you've learned something new, been inspired to think differently, and maybe you're feeling a little bit more empowered to make a difference. Remember, even small changes can have a big impact, and together we can create a world where style and sustainability go hand in hand.